Burkina Faso selected 500 prisoners for public work crews across 22 communities. They were assigned to clear block drains, remove waste, restore land, and plant 10,000 trees. Under Ibrahim Traoré, the promise is powerful: turn punishment into service and prison time into a second chance. But what would you call it? Rehabilitation or unpaid labor? A prisoner can complete every assignment, earn public praise, and still leave with no job, no money, and nowhere stable to go. Then has the program rebuilt a citizen or only completed a public project? A cleaner city may be visible within weeks. A safer society could take years to prove. And the real verdict begins when the prison uniform comes off, supervision ends, and the same pressures return. On July 31st, 2025, Burkina Faso's government announced an unusual public works experiment. 500 prisoners from detention centers across the country were selected for deployment in 22 communities. Their assignments included clearing roughly 150 kilometers of drainage channels, removing 1,500 cubic meters of waste, cutting vegetation across 300 hectares, and planting 10,000 trees. The launch was scheduled for August 2nd in Traore, but the program was not presented as a simple cleanup campaign. Officials linked it to a broader legal framework for public interest work adopted in November 2024. The stated purpose was to reduce pressure inside prisons, support reintegration, and direct available labor toward visible national needs. This experiment connects prison capacity, public works, and the harder challenge of reintegration. These were not prisoners casually released into the streets. The official announcement described participants as people whose sentence reductions had been converted into supervised public interest work. In practical terms, the government was attempting to connect three problems that are usually treated separately. Prisons need space. Communities need labor for sanitation and environmental restoration. And people leaving prison need a path back into lawful social life. On paper, the model creates value on both sides. A blocked drain is opened before heavy rain. Waste is removed from a neighborhood. A degraded area receives new trees. At the same time, a participant follows a schedule, works inside a team, completes an assigned task, and demonstrates that punishment does not have to mean total inactivity. That is why the program attracts attention. It turns prison policy into something visible. Citizens can see the canal. They can see the cleared land. They can see the trees. But visibility can also mislead. A completed project proves that work was performed. It does not automatically prove that rehabilitation occurred. A prisoner can spend weeks carrying tools without gaining a skill that an employer will recognize later. A person can follow orders under supervision without being prepared to manage rent, family pressure, rejection, and unemployment after release. And a sentence can end earlier without the conditions that contributed to the original crime having changed. Before we go further, choose one. Should prison focus mainly on punishment, rehabilitation, or both? Write one word in the comments: punishment, rehabilitation, or both, and give the reason behind your answer. Then subscribe, because the rest of this video will test whether the program can support that choice. The strongest version of this policy would create more than clean public spaces. It would create a bridge from confinement to responsibility, from responsibility to skill, from skill to employment, and from employment to a lower chance of returning to prison. The weaker version would still produce impressive numbers and useful projects, but leave former prisoners facing the same barriers when the work ends. That is the central tension. Burkina Faso can count kilometers of drains, cubic meters of waste, hectares cleared, and trees planted. But the hardest result cannot be measured at the worksite. Cleaning a canal is easy to record. Rebuilding a life is not. And behind those work uniforms is a much more complicated system. The visible work is the simplest part of the program. A canal is either cleared or it is not. A tree is either planted or it is not. But rehabilitation depends on a chain of results that is much harder to see. Selection, work, skill, certification, release, employment, reintegration. If one link breaks, the program may still produce useful public projects without changing what happens after prison. The first link is selection. Participants must be chosen through clear criteria that consider behavior, legal eligibility, physical capacity, public safety, and the type of work available. If the process is inconsistent, the program begins with doubt. People inside prison may not understand why one person receives an opportunity while another does not. The second link is the work itself. Not every assignment creates the same value for the participant. Some tasks create immediate public benefit. Removing waste, clearing drainage channels, cutting vegetation, and carrying materials can improve a neighborhood quickly. These jobs matter, but immediate public value is not the same as long-term employability. A person may become more disciplined by arriving on time, following instructions, working safely, and cooperating with a team. Those habits are useful. They can restore routine after months or years of confinement. The third link is skill. Can the participant learn something that has value outside prison? Basic construction, road paving, drainage maintenance, tree care, agricultural work, tool handling, equipment operation, worksite safety. That leads to the fourth link, certification. A supervisor may know that someone worked hard for 6 months. An employer outside prison does not. Without a recognized record, the participant returns home carrying experience that cannot easily be proven. A meaningful certificate should state what the person can actually do, not merely that the person attended a program. Can they operate a tool safely? Can they prepare a worksite? Can they lay paving stones to a defined standard? Can they maintain drainage systems? Can they complete agricultural tasks without constant supervision? If a prisoner works for months but leaves without a skill that any employer recognizes, has rehabilitation actually taken place? Work can occupy a prisoner's time. A marketable skill can change what happens after that time ends. The fifth link is release. This is where the protected environment disappears. Inside the program, a schedule is provided. Tools are available. Supervisors give instructions. Meals, housing, and movement are controlled. After release, the former prisoner must manage transportation, documents, family expectations, housing debt, social stigma, and the urgent need for income. A person may leave with better habits and still fail because the surrounding system offers no bridge. That bridge is employment. Does a construction company recognize the training? Will a municipality consider hiring a former prisoner for maintenance work? Can a participant enter an agricultural cooperative, receive basic tools, or qualify for a small startup grant? Is there an employer willing to judge current ability rather than only past conviction? Without these connections, the program may end at the prison gate. The final link is reintegration. Employment matters, but reintegration also depends on family support, stable housing, lawful income, community acceptance, and continued guidance during the first difficult months. That is why the true system is larger than public work. The worksite can create discipline. Training can create skill. Certification can create credibility. Employment can create stability. But only when those stages connect can the program reduce the pressures that pull someone back toward crime. Burkina Faso can measure every completed assignment. The deeper question is whether it is building the entire chain. Because a prisoner does not need only work while serving a sentence. He needs a realistic path for the day the work ends. A second chance becomes meaningful only when people understand how it is granted. Burkina Faso's public interest work law does not treat every prisoner as automatically eligible. The legal framework considers the offense, the harm caused, compensation, the risk of reoffending, public safety, age, fixed residence, and guarantees that the person will appear and meet assigned obligations. Those safeguards are understandable. A government cannot move people outside prison without considering security supervision and the seriousness of the original crime. But rules on paper are only the beginning. The harder question is how those rules are applied between prisoners. Who should receive the second chance, the prisoner with the best behavior, the lowest public safety risk, or the greatest need for support? Each answer protects a different value. And when two people appear to meet similar conditions, who ensures that one is not favored, while the other remains behind bars? These questions matter because access to the program can affect freedom training work experience and the possibility of earlier reintegration. The decision therefore carries enormous power. A transparent system would record why each person was accepted or refused. The criteria would be understandable. Similar cases would be treated consistently. A prisoner would know what conduct or legal condition must change before another review. Without that clarity, second chances may begin to look personal rather than legal. There is also a deeper fairness problem. Some eligibility conditions may be easier for prisoners with stable families, secure housing, financial resources, or relatives willing to guarantee their return. A poor person may have behaved equally well, but lack a permanent address. Another may be unable to compensate a victim immediately. Someone abandoned by family may have no trusted person available to support release arrangements. That does not prove the policy is unfair. It shows why implementation must be examined carefully. A rehabilitation system should not unintentionally reward social stability that existed before prison while excluding the people who need reintegration support most. The type of work assigned creates another layer of inequality. One participant may learn paving, construction, agriculture, equipment, maintenance, or tool operation. Another may spend months carrying waste, cutting vegetation, or performing repetitive, heavy labor. Both assignments can benefit the community, but they do not create the same future value. Who receives technical training? Who is allowed to work with machinery? Who earns a certificate linked to a real occupation? And who leaves with little more than proof that physical labor was completed? These decisions may shape employment chances long after the sentence ends. The program must also account for women, older prisoners, people with disabilities, and participants whose health limits the work they can perform. Equal treatment does not mean assigning everyone the same task. It means giving each eligible person a credible route to contribute, learn, and demonstrate responsibility without unnecessary danger. And there is one more person who cannot disappear from the story: the victim. Rehabilitation should reduce future harm without minimizing the harm already done. A second chance for the offender does not erase the first injury suffered by someone else. That is why decisions about public interest work must balance reintegration with accountability, public safety, and respect for victims. A credible system would also provide a review mechanism. If a prisoner believes the criteria were applied incorrectly, there should be a documented way to challenge the decision. Otherwise, an opportunity presented as rehabilitation can become another source of resentment, suspicion, and unequal treatment inside prison. Burkina Faso's experiment will be judged not only by how many prisoners enter it, but by whether access is consistent, explainable, and connected to genuine opportunity. Because when freedom work assignments and sentence decisions are scarce, the person controlling access to them holds enormous power. The program's greatest risk is not visible in the photographs. A prisoner may be wearing gloves, holding a shovel, and working under supervision. The street may be cleaner by sunset. The public project may be real, but the difference between rehabilitation and exploitation is hidden in the rules surrounding the worker. In the stronger future, participation begins with clear eligibility standards. The prisoner understands why he was selected, what work he will perform, how his conduct will be evaluated, and how the assignment affects his sentence. The work matches his physical capacity. Protective equipment is available. Rest periods, drinking water, medical support, and accident reporting are treated as basic requirements rather than optional favors. Hours are recorded accurately. Skills are documented. Complaints can be raised without retaliation. And when the work ends, the participant leaves with evidence of what he learned and a pathway toward employment. That is rehabilitation. The labor serves the community, but the system also invests in the person performing it. There is another possible future. In that future, prisoners become a convenient source of unpaid labor for projects chosen mainly because they create strong images. Work sites are announced publicly, but injuries are not. Officials count kilometers cleaned, trees planted, and materials moved, while no one tracks whether participants gain useful skills or found work after release. Assignments may be physically demanding, but offer little training. The same prisoners may remain in the hardest jobs, while others receive access to machinery technical instruction or better opportunities. And because sentence relief may be connected to participation, the meaning of consent becomes complicated. A prisoner may technically agree to work, but when the alternative is remaining behind bars, how freely can that choice really be made? That question does not automatically make the program abusive. It makes transparency essential. Now that you have seen both sides, give us your honest verdict. Is this rehabilitation exploitation, or a system that could become either one depending on the rules? Choose one in the comments and name the single safeguard that matters most. Without that transparency, a policy designed to restore responsibility could create another imbalance. Public institutions gain labor immediately, while prisoners carry the risks and receive uncertain benefits later. Authorities should explain whether participation is voluntary, what happens if someone refuses, how sentence decisions are calculated, and what protections exist against coercion or favoritism. The public also needs to know whether prison labor supplements work that local governments cannot otherwise complete or replaces jobs that could have provided income to poor workers outside prison. A program can create public value while still shifting costs onto people with the least power to object. The most credible system would publish clear rules, safety standards, selection criteria, work records, complaint procedures, and long-term outcomes. Not every detail must be public at the level of individual identities, but the structure must be visible enough to test. Were people protected? Were decisions consistent? Were skills gained? Were sentence benefits applied as promised? Did participants find lawful work later on? The difference between rehabilitation and exploitation may not appear in the work itself. It is revealed by who has power, who has protection, and what happens after the cameras leave. Good intentions are not enough to protect a program this sensitive. Burkina Faso needs mechanisms that can be checked by prisoners, families, supervisors, employers, courts, and the public. The first mechanism is an individual work record. Every participant should have a documented file showing the hours worked, tasks completed, tools used, safety incidents, supervisor evaluations, and skills demonstrated. That record should follow the person through the program and remain available at release. Without documentation, months of work can disappear into a vague statement that someone participated. The second mechanism is skills certification. A certificate should not merely confirm attendance. It should identify a specific capability. Can the participant lay paving stones to an accepted standard? Can he maintain drainage channels, operate basic equipment, care for trees, follow safety procedures, or complete agricultural tasks without constant supervision? The third mechanism is health and safety protection. Public work may involve heat-sharp tools, contaminated water, heavy materials, traffic, machinery, or unstable ground. Participants need protective equipment, clean drinking water, rest periods, medical support, and a clear process for reporting accidents. If injuries are hidden because the program must appear successful, rehabilitation becomes secondary to image. The fourth mechanism is a transparent sentence calculation. Public reporting has described the conversion between work and sentence reduction in conflicting ways. Every participant should know exactly how time is credited, what behavior can remove eligibility, who verifies completed work, and how a disputed calculation can be reviewed. A rule that affects freedom cannot depend on rumor. The fifth mechanism is a bridge to employers. Training has little value if no one outside prison recognizes it. Construction companies, municipalities, agricultural cooperatives, maintenance firms, and public contractors can help define useful skills, observe training, offer interviews, and create entry-level opportunities before release. The bridge may also include identification documents, transportation support, temporary housing, basic tools, or a small grant for lawful self-employment. Employers should not enter only after training is finished. They should help design the training from the beginning, identify real vacancies, and explain the standards expected on a work site. Otherwise, participants may earn credentials for abilities that local companies do not need, trust, or recognize in practice after release. The government can count kilometers cleaned and trees planted immediately. But which result should matter most: the work completed today, the jobs gained after release, or the number of people who never returned to prison? How many participants completed the program? How many received recognized skills? How many found lawful work? How many kept that work after 1 year? How many returned to prison? How much did the program cost compared with repeated incarceration? These questions are less dramatic than images of prisoners working in public, but they reveal whether the policy is creating temporary labor or durable reintegration. A strong system would publish aggregated results without exposing personal identities. That would allow the public to see both success and failure. It would also give officials a reason to improve the program rather than simply defend it. Good intentions can launch a reform. Only measurable mechanisms can prove that it deserves to continue. A public work program changes meaning depending on where you stand. For the prisoner, the work may offer structure, movement, and the possibility of returning home sooner. But the real question is, what waits outside the gate? A man may learn to arrive on time, follow instructions, and complete difficult physical tasks. Yet discipline alone does not pay rent, replace identification papers, repair family relationships, or convince an employer to overlook a criminal record. The value of the program will therefore be measured by whether today's work creates tomorrow's legal income. For the prisoner's family, the calculation is emotional as well as practical. An earlier return may bring hope. It may also bring fear. Has the person changed? Can the household absorb another adult without steady work? Will old conflicts return? A family may want reunion and still be unprepared for the financial and psychological pressure that comes with reintegration. For local residents, the benefits are easier to see. A cleared drainage channel can reduce stagnant water. A cleaner public space can improve daily life. Trees can restore shade and protect soil. Visible work can also reassure citizens that prison sentences are producing something useful rather than only consuming public resources. But communities need confidence that participants are supervised, work sites are safe, and the program is organized around public need rather than political display. The victim sees the policy from another angle. For someone harmed by crime, images of rehabilitation may feel incomplete if accountability is barely mentioned. A credible system must hold two truths at once. People can change, and the damage they caused remains real. Rehabilitation should reduce the chance of another victim without asking the first victim to forget what happened. Then there is the low-income worker outside prison. A public project may be necessary because a municipality lacks enough staff or resources. So answer this. If unpaid prison labor replaces a job that could have supported a poor family outside prison, has the program solved one problem by creating another? That distinction requires public data, not assumptions. There is also the employer. A business owner may support rehabilitation in principle, but still worry about reliability, safety, public reaction, and financial risk. That is why certificates, supervised work records, references, and clear support after release matter. They give the employer evidence beyond a promise that someone has changed. Each group judges success differently. The prisoner wants a future. The family wants stability. The resident wants safer and cleaner surroundings. The victim wants accountability and less future harm. The worker wants fair access to paid employment. The employer wants proof that the applicant can perform. A strong program must create value across all 6 perspectives. A clean canal is visible by the end of the day. A rebuilt life may take years to prove. That is why the final judgment cannot be made from photographs of prisoners holding shovels. It must be made after release, when supervision ends, pressure returns, and the person must choose what comes next. That is the moment when rehabilitation either becomes real or collapses. Burkina Faso can count every canal cleared, every tree planted, every hectare restored, and every prisoner who completes a public work assignment. But those numbers will not answer the most important question. Did the program make society safer after release? First, safety. Were participants protected with proper equipment, medical support, reasonable workloads, and clear reporting when injuries occurred? Second, fairness. Were eligibility decisions, work assignments, and sentence calculations applied consistently, or did access depend on personal influence, family support, or the discretion of one official? Third, skills. Did participants leave with recognized abilities that employers could verify, or only with proof that they had performed unpaid labor? Fourth, employment. How many former prisoners found lawful work, kept that work, supported their families, and remained stable during the difficult first year outside prisons? Fifth, repeat crime. Did participants return to prison less often than comparable people who did not enter the program? In the stronger future, communities receive cleaner infrastructure, prisoners gain real skills, employers open pathways, families regain stability, and fewer people return to crime. In the weaker future, the canals are cleared and the photographs look successful, but former prisoners leave without income, housing support, or a credible place in the labor market. The public project succeeds. The human project fails. Burkina Faso's experiment should not be praised or condemned by appearance alone. It should be measured over time through transparent data, protected rights, employment outcomes, and the number of people who build lawful lives after release. A clean canal is visible immediately. A rebuilt citizen is visible only when pressure returns, when money is short, when rejection comes, when old relationships reappear, and when the person must decide whether to repeat the past or choose a different path. That decision, repeated across hundreds of lives, will determine whether this reform becomes development or only temporary labor. Now give us your final judgment. Should Burkina Faso expand this program now, or prove first that participants are finding jobs and avoiding repeat crime? Comment, expand it, or prove it first. Then give the one reason that decided your answer. Subscribe for more documentaries that test Africa's biggest promises against the results ordinary people can actually feel. The real question is not whether prisoners can help rebuild Burkina Faso. It is whether the system can help them rebuild themselves.